the Vietnam vets, because during that era, and that's my era, uh, uh, everybody's wearing field jackets. All the hippies were putting peace signs and stuff on, more or less appropriating a military symbol into the peace movement.
Well, there's a reason why the peace movement looked militant. It's because it was filled with veterans. VVAW had 50,000 members at one point. The veterans have been written out of history of the peace movement. But let's face it, it wasn't the hippies and the yippies that ended the Vietnam War. It was the draft resistance and the veterans resistance and the active duty GI resistance.
Yep.
The others fed into that, and I don't want to discount their role.
Right.
But veterans, GIs, have been written out of our history. And so was the draft movement, largely. We don't even recognize the fact that there was an anti-draft movement in this country. And what did that do? That took the strength from the military. Because it took its recruits, and it cut its recruits down heavily, because people wouldn't register for the draft. They wouldn't go. And then GIs resisted. They wouldn't fight within Vietnam. And then veterans were resisting, so you couldn't even have people come home and say, but we're doing great things over there. Because there were so many vets coming home and saying, we're not doing great things over there.
Yep.
And now today, let's look at today's movement then. Okay? Because I really believe without VVAW, Vietnam Veterans Against the War,
Yep.
there could be no IVAW. Certainly not as quickly as we formed. VVAW, Jan Berry, came home from Vietnam in 1963. Did not form one of the co-founders of VVAW in 1967, 4 years after he came home from Vietnam. Kelly Doherty and our group of vets who started IVAW, it was a matter of months before they returned from their first tours of duty in Iraq that they formed Iraq Veterans Against the War. How were they able to do this? Because we had a number of VVAW members, now members of Veterans for Peace, who were there as mentors, as guides. And we have been able to stand on the shoulders of giants and reach to the stars. And we really do stand on those shoulders very proudly. Operation First Casualty is based on Operation Rapid American Withdrawal. We've learned from their mistakes. We've learned from their successes. And we continue to do that every day as we move ahead. But then let's further examine today's movement in comparison to that. And we really want to talk about ending the war in Iraq. Counter-recruitment. Counter-recruitment work is being done by veterans and civilians all over this country. And even if it's not to totally counter recruitment, just to give the truth in recruiting. Because if recruiters couldn't lie and tell people they're not going to Iraq, and they couldn't lie and say you're going to get these huge amounts of money. You don't go in the military to get rich. We always had that saying. You're not in the military to get rich. You're in the military to serve your country. And if they can't even give these lies, then it cuts off the ammunition going into the machine. And now GIs are resisting. Active duty. We've got active duty bases that have chapters of IVAW on them, and they're the fastest growing contingent of IVAW is on active duty bases.
And it spells trouble.
And that's inside the machine.
Yeah.
And now, what the machine is producing is us, veterans who oppose the war. Very similar to what happened in the Vietnam era. And I think that this war, you're seeing how we're grinding the machine to a halt because we're making it impossible. Now there's all these other pillars to this war. There is the American public support. There's the resistance within Iraq, both politically and militarily. All these things are adding to it. But IVAW uniquely can address the machine itself. Counter-recruitment, or truth in recruiting. We can address GI resistance and veterans issues. And that's what we do on a daily basis. We do that nationally, internationally, on the local, on the one-on-one level. Because when I go up to a soldier and I talk to him, it's not some hippie peace activist talking about love and bullshit like that. 9 years. 12 Bravo, 11 Bravo, 13 months of OIF. Honorable discharges from active duty and the Guard. I'm a GI talking to another GI. I'm a vet talking to another vet. That's a whole new element that I don't know if it's quite understood, but IVAW just has that ability to have that in our movement. And it's so very important to have it because when all the soldiers lay down their weapons, whether they go AWOL, whether they're going to Canada, whether they're just getting out, if our soldiers refuse to fight, there's no military left to do a job.